After 50, the sooner you notice the problem, the better. But how can you know about a disease before any tests? It turns out it's possible. Our sweat speaks about health issues. Sweating a lot? Signal. Smell like fish? Another one. If the smell becomes sharp and sour, yet another. Sweating heavily only at night? It's time to see a doctor. Today we will talk about how to interpret the signals based on the smell and quantity of sweat, and how to deal with sweat when it's pouring in streams. How much sweat is normal, and how much is already a disease? What illness do you have if you sweat only at night? What to remove from the table to stop the sweat from smelling? How to get rid of the grandmother smell? How to treat sweating with folk remedies? How does sweat smell in liver problems and other diseases? What reduces foot sweating? Watch us until the end, and you'll also learn the recipe for a simple and safe remedy for sweat, and hear our expert's story about an unusual solution to the sweaty problem. Your body has about 4 million sweat glands, and most of them secrete colorless, odorless sweat. In the armpits and groin, there are other glands that produce thicker sweat, but this sweat doesn't smell either. The smell appears because of the bacteria living on your skin, which feed on sweat. Oh yes, bacteria eat everything. There are even some that feed on sewage. So bacteria on your skin eat sweat and produce the unpleasant smell. The more bacteria, the stronger the smell. And the more sweat, the more bacteria as they multiply in a moist environment. But we can't stop sweating. After all, sweat glands regulate body temperature. They cool us down when it's hot. And by sweating, we not only avoid overheating, but also eliminate toxins. Although, wait, can toxins exit through the skin? After all, the liver and kidneys are responsible for toxin elimination in the body. To understand this, let's learn what sweat is made of. It's water and salts, as well as various substances like urea, ammonia, and even cholesterol. There are also toxins in sweat, although very little. Interestingly, the sweat that regulates body temperature is secreted across the entire skin surface, so to cool down, we sweat from head to toe. But during stress, sweating usually occurs on the palms, forehead, and armpits. So, wait, why do we sweat when we're nervous? Let's figure it out. Remember, when you're anxious, you sweat, right? That's emotional sweat. Look, any emotional cause, stress, anxiety, worry, and especially fear, leads to increased sweating because the nervous system, which is responsible for readiness in dangerous situations, gets activated. In a state of fear, the body produces adrenaline, the stress hormone, which changes the smell of sweat, signaling your emotions to those around you. This is why dogs can sense when a person is scared, and it's scientifically proven that animals detect anxiety and other emotions through the smell of human sweat. And if you're constantly in a stressful situation, the stress hormone will cause you to sweat all the time. But this is not a medical problem, it's a psychological one. Medical issues include hyperhidrosis, or excessive sweating, hormonal changes, and various diseases. Do you know why some people sweat excessively only at night? What causes night sweats? Increased sweating at night can indicate thyroid diseases and endocrine disorders. Sweating is also considered one of the symptoms of tuberculosis. During menopause, excessive sweating, known as hot flashes, is also common, which usually occur at night. But once the body adjusts, the sweating subsides. But if excessive sweating is bothering you, there is a way to deal with it. Our expert, experienced dermatologist Marta Viktorovna Jurovich, will tell you about the most effective solution. The simplest, most effective, and long-term method of treating hyperhidrosis is botulinum therapy. This involves the injection of botulinum neurotoxin-based preparations, which allows for results as soon as the next day, with effects lasting up to a year. We figured out the causes of excessive sweating and how to get rid of it. Now, I'll teach you how to diagnose diseases by the smell of sweat very soon. But right now, let's talk about how to defeat the smell of aging sweat. Why do we smell bad at all? Poor hygiene, the obvious answer. But there's one nuance. The smell of sweat is also influenced by what we eat, which I'll tell you about very soon, and our genetics. Yes, the genes of different ethnic groups differ and give a more pronounced or unique smell. They say that Kalmyks don't smell at all. Perhaps the reason lies in their genes. Or maybe Kalmyks just sweat less because they drink salty Kalmyk tea in the heat, which helps retain water in the body. As they say, sweat less, smell less. But here's an interesting fact. In old age, all people sweat less. But for some reason, they tend to smell stronger, and it's not always pleasant. But the reason isn't the sweat. Its smell changes with age, of course, becoming sharper and more pronounced. But the so-called old age smell is not caused by sweat. The unpleasant grandmother's aroma comes from the oxidation of sebum, which is produced in large quantities in old age. This sebum oxidizes on your skin, forming a substance, 2-nonenal, which gives that characteristic smell of an older person. It's impossible to stop this. Sebum is produced and oxidizes. There's nothing you can do about it. Although, why not do something? You can reduce the sharpness of the smell a little. Liquid antibacterial soap or a gel with a neutral pH can help temporarily eliminate the smell of old age. These products are labeled with pH equals 5.5. You can take a bath with herbal infusions such as calendula, chamomile, or St. John's wort. Also, reducing the calorie intake can help suppress the smell. Eat less fatty foods if you don't want to smell like an old grandmother. And overall, pay attention to your diet because, as they say, we smell like what we eat. The thing is, food inside us gets processed and turns into a large number of different micronutrients, which have their own distinct smells. Take alcohol, for example. What happens when you indulge in alcoholic beverages? Alcohol is processed in the liver into acetic acid, which is released through breath and sweat. The more you drink, the more acid is produced, and the more unpleasant the smell, both from your breath and from your sweat. Or cabbage, any kind. It contains sulfur, which is released through the skin and gives the sweat an unpleasant odor. By the way, it's not just cabbage that makes you smell like sulfur. Garlic and onions also contain sulfur compounds, which makes your sweat sharp and extremely unpleasant. So, you'll have to choose. Boost your immunity by consuming onions and garlic during the cold season, or smell good. By the way, we have a separate video on immunity. You can watch it. Coffee also changes the smell of sweat because it contains caffeine, which causes sweat glands to produce sweat actively, but it also retains water. That's why a coffee lover's sweat is more concentrated and sharper. Spices strongly affect the smell of sweat. Curry, cumin, coriander, and also hot seasonings like chili, mustard, ginger, and horseradish give sweat a pronounced smell. They also warm up the body, which increases sweating for cooling. What else makes the smell of sweat sharp? Nicotine. Smokers smell less pleasant than those who don't smoke. During smoking, nicotine is processed inside the body, and its byproducts are excreted with sweat, giving it the characteristic smell of a smoker. I once told this to my neighbor, and he chuckled, saying he's been smoking all his life and never noticed any unpleasant odor from himself. He's not the only one. Now, think about it. Has anyone ever hinted at an unpleasant smell from you, but you didn't smell it yourself? Give us a like if it has happened. After all, it's normal not to feel your own scent. Look how interesting. Our sense of smell is connected to a group of nerve endings that respond to odors and send signals to the brain. But since the smell of our sweat is with us all the time, the nerves quickly get tired of reacting to it. I would say they sniff and then shut off, and the nervous system simply doesn't get any signals about the smell of your sweat. That's why we don't smell our own odor, or it seems weaker than it actually is. This applies not only to sweat, but also to perfumes, for example. You can pour an entire bottle on yourself thinking the fragrance is weak, while people on the bus will choke from the strong smell. But worse than suffocating perfume smells are the smells of disease. And that's what we'll talk about right now. And right after that, the best folk remedies for sweating. Diseases really do change the smell of sweat. In a state of emergency, the metabolism in the body changes. Simply put, our body reacts like a chemical plant in an accident, and this produces a different odor. For example, many know that in diabetes, the smell of sweat resembles acetone. Let's take a moment right now, pay attention to your smell, take a sniff. What do you smell? Does it smell like acetone or not? And overall, does the smell of your sweat differ from the usual? If yes, it's a good reason to pay attention to your health. In the past, doctors lacking ultrasound or lab results would rely on the smell of sweat. And they could immediately determine, for example, from the nauseating smell of rotting apples that the patient had diphtheria. Does this method still work? Of course. And even without a medical degree, you can suspect a disease in its early stages and see a doctor in time if you know how diseases smell. Let me tell you, a sharp beer-like smell and sweat indicates active tuberculosis, and the sour smell of vinegar suggests hidden tuberculosis. However, the smell of acid can also appear in a healthy person when there's a vitamin D deficiency. And if a person smells like fish, although they're not a fisherman, do you know the cause? People with a fishy smell of sweat typically have a metabolic disorder, meaning there are issues with absorbing certain nutrients. If they eat high-protein foods such as fish, for example, the characteristic sharp smell of a fish market appears. The liver also signals diseases with the smell of fresh fish. A malfunction in the digestive system or intestines gives sweat the smell of hydrogen sulfide. The person then smells like rotten eggs. Kidney pathologies give a sharp ammonia smell in sweat, and a sick person can smell like cat urine. A similar smell also appears in healthy people on a protein diet when eating a lot of meat and other protein while restricting everything else. Food, I must say, greatly influences the smell and amount of sweat. And very soon, I'll tell you what should be removed from your plate to make you sweat less and smell better. Food directly affects our health, as we've discussed more than once. It turns out, stress has a smell. Specialists from a large Japanese cosmetics company conducted a 4-year study and discovered the following. Sweat from a person in a stressed state has a distinct and unpleasant smell of onions. So if someone around you smells like onions, perhaps something isn't going well in their life. However, any sweat odor can be neutralized. What remedies help you smell good, and which ones prevent sweating at all? Stay tuned. What neutralizes the smell of sweat? Water, believe it or not. To remove the sharp odor of sweat, you need to drink a lot of water. Water makes sweat less concentrated, and you smell better. And do you know what you should eat to make your sweat smell pleasant? Mint and parsley help. If you drink mint tea and eat parsley, the smell of sweat will become less sharp and more pleasant. Citrus fruits and pineapples also make the sweat smell better. A good remedy to make your sweat smell nice is to drink herbal tea with jasmine. By the way, when you drink moderately high tea in the heat, your brain gets the signal, heat, and activates the cooling system. Therefore, in hot weather, no matter how much you sweat, it's healthier for your body to drink warm drinks, not cold ones. Pine and bitter woody scents help mask the smell of sweat. But here's the question. What is more effective against sweat? Deodorants or antiperspirants? What do you use? Write in the comments, maybe you have a secret remedy that 100% saves you from the smell of sweat. Tell us what it is. And I'll remind you, a deodorant masks the smell, while an antiperspirant reduces the amount of sweat. This effect is achieved thanks to the aluminum salts in the composition. They constrict the sweat glands, and sweat glands can't seep through them. What do you think? Have you heard about the harm of aluminum salts? Let's clarify with an expert. Recently, there was a discussion within the medical community regarding the safety of antiperspirants containing aluminum salts. Some studies raised concerns, suggesting that these antiperspirants could cause breast cancer. However, recent research has disproved this information, and it is now considered that antiperspirants are safe. Have you heard? The danger of aluminum salts in the body is exaggerated, and if it's convenient for you to use modern sweat products, go ahead. But what if you're applying them incorrectly? Many don't know how to use antiperspirants properly and how to do it correctly. The doctor explains. An effective method is the use of antiperspirants. They are primarily based on aluminum salts. However, few people know how to use them properly, and by habit, apply them before heading to work. In fact, such antiperspirants should be applied to completely dry skin before bedtime. It turns out, antiperspirants need time to penetrate the skin and create a barrier. At night, when you're less active and sweat less, an antiperspirant has a better chance of effectively blocking the sweat glands. Be sure to watch our video until the end, and you'll learn even more interesting and useful information, like how to make a safe deodorant at home without any salts and chemicals. But for now, let's figure out how much sweating is normal and how much sweat is already a disease. At a comfortable temperature, the human body typically releases about half a liter of sweat, but in the heat, up to 10 liters. Some sweat more, some less. But as you can imagine, the amount of sweat is influenced by your diet, clothing, genetics, and mental resilience. Sweating a lot is normal. What's not normal is sweating almost constantly, during the day, at night, even when it's cold and there's no physical activity. That's already a problem, and it's called hyperhidrosis. Hyperhidrosis can be a standalone condition or a symptom of other diseases. Sometimes hyperhidrosis can be secondary, meaning it is a symptom of other diseases. Most often, these are thyroid disorders, diabetes, and central nervous system diseases. It can also be a manifestation of chronic infections or acute respiratory diseases. For those whose excessive sweating is not due to stress or physical activity, there are folk methods to reduce sweating. How to treat sweating. Doctors usually prescribe multivitamins, iron, calcium, and phosphorus supplements. But this should be done strictly according to a prescription. Uncontrolled intake of supplements or vitamins can harm your body. However, there's no harm in taking a lemon balm or sage infusion as long as you're not allergic to these herbs. Brew lemon balm or sage in the traditional way, 2 teaspoons of dried herbs per cup of boiling water. Drink half a cup twice a day, warm. Important note, it's better not to add sugar. In general, sugar is not added to herbal teas. Medicinal herbs can interact with sugar, which can alter their chemical composition and consequently their healing properties. This reduces the effectiveness of the tea. And of course, you need to choose remedies for yourself, as the same recipe or treatment may affect different people differently. I want to share with you a story from my practice. A young woman came to me for a routine cosmetic procedure. However, on the day of the appointment, she seemed upset. When I started asking her about it, she revealed that she was going to her friend's wedding and had found a gorgeous dress, but couldn't buy it because she had hyperhidrosis, and its effects would be noticeable on such a dress. I told her that this condition can be easily corrected with botulinum toxin. We performed the procedure the same day, and she went to her friend's wedding in the dress she had dreamed of. Now it's time to tell you about the most effective folk remedies for fighting sweat. Choose any one that suits you from our list. We've collected them in a separate tip. And number 1 on the list is essential oils. They don't just mask the smell, but also suppress the activity of bacteria that can cause the smell. The oil can be diluted in water in a 1-to-1 ratio and applied to clean skin. In ancient Egypt, aromatic oils and incense were used to combat sweat, and in Rome, various herbal infusions and decoctions were used. Chamomile and oak bark decoctions, and today they are an excellent remedy for sweat. Wipe your armpits with them, wash your feet, or add the decoction to your bath. Foot sweating can also be helped by regular baths with infusions of bay leaves, plantain, and fresh birch leaves. It's simple to make. Take 2 handfuls of fresh leaves, pour 4 liters of water over them, and boil for 5 minutes. Then cool and use. Keep your feet in the bath for about 15 to 20 minutes. If you add a tablespoon of soda to the decoction, you will enhance its antiperspirant properties, as soda, being an alkaline substance, neutralizes the acids produced by bacteria on the skin. This helps reduce the unpleasant smell. Apple cider vinegar also fights bacteria well. You can pour 1 cup of 3% apple cider vinegar into a basin, dilute it with 3 liters of warm water, and add 3 drops of fir oil, although this is optional. Soak your feet for about 15 to 20 minutes. By the way, you can also wipe your armpits with diluted apple cider vinegar. Just like with hydrogen peroxide, which acts as an antiseptic and removes the unpleasant smell. But first and foremost, hygiene saves you from sweat, of course. Use antibacterial soap for washing your feet and armpits. Then dry them well with a towel, and you can powder the sweaty areas with baby powder. This will temporarily stop the sweating. Now, the promised useful recipe for those who watch till the end. Let's make a safe deodorant. All the ingredients for this recipe can be bought in stores or ordered on marketplaces. You'll need coconut oil, cornstarch, baking soda, and a few drops of essential oil. Take whichever oil you like best, lavender or tea tree oil. Melt 1 tablespoon of coconut oil until liquid. Add 1 tablespoon of baking soda, without a heap, and 1 tablespoon of cornstarch. Mix well. The deodorant will turn out thick, like good sour cream. Pour everything into a clean bottle or a cream jar and store it in the fridge. Use it as needed. But as you understand, hiding the sweat is just eliminating the consequence, not the cause. And if your strong or unpleasant smelling sweat is a symptom of a disease or stress, you need to find and remove the cause. If you sweat like a normal, healthy person, then keep an eye on hygiene. Try to avoid foods that make sweat sharp, and try to worry less. Today we told you everything we wanted about sweat. Was our video helpful to you? Please write about it in the comments. Also, give us a like and subscribe to our channel. Wishing you health and longevity.